List. I included Jeffrey Epstein in my column, even though he was not a well-known name in Turkey and many people had not heard of him. I wrote for days. I told you what I could tell. I shared. It wasn't that popular in those days. Even if it was read, it was over and done with. However, he was a very important name with very critical duties at the headquarters of the CIA as the bearer of the oligarchs. The subject was not as limited as described. It wasn't about little girls, perversions, trafficking, or blackmail. It was one of the intelligence operations of the century. And at the center of the matter was William Burns, now the head of the CIA. Let's open it. The big power right behind Jeffrey Epstein was Nat Rothschild. With the support he received from the family, he established and developed relationships with politicians, billionaires, and important names of the academic world. It could hardly be otherwise. In 2005, he got into trouble for molesting a 14-year-old little girl. Then the complaints came like rain. Because of these events, some famous names, including former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, distanced themselves from Epstein. For a while, of course. Charity activities were enough to bring them all to the same denominator. The story continued for years to be used when the time came. Aloud. In 2019, Epstein was detained. Even though important people immediately intervened, they were liquidated internally. The list exploded with the complaints of those who wanted to express their troubles in the courtrooms. And the world was shocked by these names, some of which it saw. Naturally, they were surprised. What was left behind was his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, and his notes. The entire file was in the CIA. For example, Maxwell was holding Epstein's hand and taking him to Buckingham Palace and introducing him to the entire royal family. The Rothschilds, J.P. Morgans, Clintons, Trumps were all his friends. There was no one who did not go to his island or board the planes provided by the CIA. Such a network of relationships could not be the result of personal skill. It was not possible. According to the U.S. media, Clinton's name was mentioned as Do 36 in the court documents. Kathy Alexander, Miles Alexander, James Michael Ostrich, Philip Barden, Kate Blanchett, David Boies, Laura Booth, Evelyn Boulette, Rebecca Boylan, Joshua Bunner, Naomi Campbell, David Copperfield, Alexandra Cousteau, Leonardo DiCaprio, Alan Dershowitz, Simberly Espinoza, Robert. Many names such as Giuffre, Al Gore, Philip Goodryan, Shannon Harrison, Stephen Hawking, Victoria Hazel, Bill Richardson, Sky Roberts, Scott Rothstein, Forrest Sawyer, Doug Scuttle and Prince Andrew were on the list. There was an incredible network, from financial barons to royal families, from stars to scientists. And the U.S. deep state was controlled, leaking some of this. The mind that hid the fact that Minister of Defense Austin was taken to intensive care and did not even tell the president could have prevented this list from being published if it wanted. It didn't pass. It was meant to be seen and known. Why was the list announced now? This is what should be emphasized. A very deep-seated mind was directing this. I think it also involved a defensive move based on fear. How does? Epstein was no mystery to the CIA. He was the man. Even though Epstein fell, the support he received from the big financier behind him, the famous university and the CIA did not decrease. As the dates show, 2014, William Burns, who is now the chief of the CIA, was the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time. With the intervention of a very important friend from the CIA, he met with Epstein at an important government law firm in Washington. Even though they came together for lunch, the meal took longer. Epstein had his own chauffeur drop Burns off at the airport. Darren Akil and Burns, who watched everything from outside until they arrived at the CIA presidency, pressed the button when the day came. Slitted-eyed was not on the lists. However, there were relations that would shake England and Israel. In its war with China, the U.S. deep state was giving a warning to everyone by adding the big players approaching China and the tabloid figures into the bag. There were other messages too. But the main thing was that they watched everyone in every way. The files were perfect. The results were certain. A powerful center within the USA was adding the Epstein list to its fight with China. And their bosses behind. They were declaring that they would not surrender easily. The common denominator of the families of the big financial giants and those who want global change was Epstein. It was very useful because, even though the CIA was involved, it stood outside. William Burns enlarged the files he received in 2014, and when the deep order came, the button was pressed. Even though the operation has other branches, the situation seems like this for now. Even important members of the families who supported Epstein were also exposed. He was put in the same basket with perverts. Some names are very critical. We write. The global fight was continuing with global players. Let's see where this will end.